The seed that was not there. I have been playing Minecraft since 2011. I have seen the Herobrine hoaxes, the Entity 303 creepypastas, and the Far Lands glitches. I am an adult now. I do not get spooked by block games. But 3 nights ago, I found a world that I cannot delete, and I think I made a mistake by trying to stay. It started when I was digging through an old external hard drive and found a folder titled alpha_1.2.6 backup. Inside was a single world folder labeled Home. When I loaded it up using a version launcher, everything seemed normal at first. It was that classic neon green alpha grass. I was standing in a small dirt hut. In the chest, there was just one item, a single piece of paper. This should not have been possible in that version of the game. The text on the item hover read, "Don't look at the sky." I laughed it off as a joke from my teenage self. I stepped outside to see the blocky sun rising, but the sun was not a square. It was a jagged, flickering circle that seemed to be vibrating in place. As I explored, the world felt heavy. You know that feeling in Minecraft when you are deep in a cave and the ambience track plays that low, echoing drone? That sound was playing constantly, even at the surface. I found a village. This was alpha, so villages should not have existed yet. The houses were made of bedrock and glass. Inside the houses, there were no villagers, just signs. Each sign had a timestamp. 12:01, it is watching. 12:04, the render distance is shrinking. 12:10, I cannot find the save and quit button. I checked my menu. The save and quit to title button was grayed out. I figured it was a corrupted file or a weird mod I had forgotten about. I tried to Alt F4. My screen flickered, but the game stayed open. That is when I noticed the fog. In the old versions, the fog was a thick wall, but this fog was moving. It was pulling inward, block by block. My render distance was being forced down to tiny, then short, until I could only see about 5 blocks in front of me. I heard a sound, not a zombie groan or a skeleton rattle. It was the sound of a player eating. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I turned around. Standing at the edge of the fog was a player skin. It looked like the default Steve, but the skin was unwrapped. The face was on the chest, and the limbs were twitching at angles the game's engine should not allow. It was not attacking. It was just mining. It was mining the dirt beneath it, dropping straight down into a hole. I followed it. I don't know why. Curiosity is a death sentence in these games. I jumped down the 1x1 hole the Steve had made. I fell for a long time. When I landed, I did not take fall damage. I was in a massive cavern made entirely of player heads. Thousands of them, all with my current skin. I looked up. The Steve was standing at the top of the hole, looking down. It typed in the chat, a feature that should not work in single-player alpha. "It is much quieter down here, isn't it?" The game's audio suddenly cut to total silence. No footsteps, no wind, just a faint, wet breathing coming through my actual headset. I tried to pull the plug on my PC. The lights on the tower went out, but the monitor stayed on. The game was still running. The player heads in the cavern started to rotate. They all turned to face my character. My character's health bar started to jitter. The hearts were not disappearing. They were turning into small black eyes. On my second monitor, a notepad file opened by itself. It typed, "I see you through the glass." I looked at my reflection in the darkened monitor. In the reflection, behind my chair in my real room, was a tall, blocky figure made of static. I did not turn around. I could not move. I'm writing this from my phone in the bathroom. I locked the door. I can hear the Minecraft hit sound coming from my bedroom. Oof, oof, oof. Every time I hear the sound, I feel a sharp pain in my chest. My computer is still off, but the room is glowing that eerie alpha version neon green. I just got a notification on my phone, an email from myself. The subject line is the seed of that world. The body of the email just says, "Turn around, I want to show you the sky." If anyone finds a world file named home in an old backup, don't open it. It doesn't matter how much you miss the old days. Some things are left in the code for a reason.
The Bedrock Architect. I have spent the last 3 years of my life inside a private server called The Monument. It was a passion project, a digital obsession shared between me and an online friend named Caleb. We met on a building forum back in 2019 and we clicked instantly. We both had this weird, specific goal. We wanted to push the Minecraft engine to its absolute limit. We chose a 100 by 100 chunk area, and we began the grueling process of mining it all the way down to the very last layer of bedrock. The plan was to build a Gothic cathedral, not on top of the world, but inside the void itself. A massive hanging structure of black stone and soul lantern light suspended over the unbreakable floor of the world. We were about 80% finished. The spires were reaching up toward the surface, and the stained glass windows made of purple and black tint were finally being installed. Then, 6 months ago, Caleb stopped logging in. It wasn't a slow fade. One night we were discussing the layout of the crypts, and the next day his Discord was offline. No goodbye, no I'm busy with school, nothing. I messaged him every day for a month, then once a week. Eventually, I just stopped. I kept the server running though. I couldn't bring myself to delete the work we'd done. Sometimes I'd log in just to walk through the empty halls of our cathedral, listening to the echo of my own footsteps, feeling the crushing weight of the silence. Last Tuesday, that silence was broken. I was sitting at my desk, half asleep, scrolling through emails, when I heard that iconic ding from my second monitor. I looked over, and my heart nearly stopped. The server console was open, and the text read, "Caleb92 joined the game." I scrambled for my mouse, my hands shaking so hard I nearly knocked over my coffee. I launched the game, bypassed the title screen, and hammered the join button. My mind was racing. Was he okay? Where had he been? Was he hiding from something? When the world loaded, I was standing on the high balcony of the South Spire. I immediately opened the chat. "Caleb," I typed, my fingers fumbling over the keys. "Dude, you're alive! Where the hell have you been? I've been messaging you for months." I waited. The chat remained empty. I hit the tab key to check the player list. Caleb was there, but his head icon was distorted. It wasn't the night skin he'd worn for years. It was a mess of gray and white pixels, like static on an old television. I looked at his coordinates. He was at the very bottom of our excavation, Y level 1, the bedrock floor. I didn't wait for a reply. I equipped my elytra, took a deep breath, and leapt off the balcony. The wind hissed past my character's ears as I spiraled down into the dark.
The cathedral looked like a skeletal ribcage in the gloom, illuminated only by the faint flickering glow of soul fire. As I approached the bottom, I saw him. He was standing in the dead center of our 100 by 100 hole. He wasn't moving. He didn't have any armor on, no tools in his hand. But as I landed and the chunks rendered in high detail, I realized the skin wasn't just static. It was a high-resolution texture of a human body wrapped in filthy, wet surgical bandages. There were no eyes, just two perfectly square black holes where the pixels had been deleted. "Caleb?" I whispered into my headset, forgetting for a second that we weren't in a voice call. I typed it into the chat instead. "Hey man, you okay? Talk to me." He didn't turn around. Instead, a sound started coming through my speakers. It wasn't a Minecraft sound. It was a low-frequency hum, the kind you hear standing near a high-voltage power line. It grew louder the closer I walked to him. Then, the chat scrolled. "I found the seam." "What seam? What are you talking about? Look, if this is a prank, you got me. Just tell me where you've been." Caleb's character suddenly snapped its head 180 degrees to look at me. The animation was instant, no transition, just a frame-perfect twitch. The developers built the world on top of something else. They used the bedrock to hide the basement, but the basement is full. Suddenly, the server began to lag. My frame rate dropped from 140 to 15. The server lag warning flashed in the corner of my screen. I watched in utter disbelief as Caleb produced a pickaxe. It wasn't diamond, netherite, or even gold. It was a tool made of shifting, glitching code. It looked like a hole in the game's reality. He swung it at the bedrock. Crack! The sound was so loud it clipped my audio, sending a spike of static through my headphones that made me wince in physical pain. The unbreakable block shattered, but it didn't disappear. It didn't drop as an item. It tore open. Underneath the bedrock, there was no void. There were no stars. Instead, a window opened in the floor of the game. It was a real-time, high-definition video feed. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a room, a basement. It had wood-paneled walls, a dusty treadmill in the corner, and a distinctive L-shaped desk. My blood turned to ice. It was my room. It was the room I was sitting in right now. I looked down at the floor beneath my actual physical feet. I half expected to see the carpet tear open. But on the screen, through that hole in the Minecraft world, I could see the back of a chair. My chair. I could see the back of my own head. "Caleb, stop!" I typed, my voice trembling as I spoke to the empty room. "Stop this! This isn't funny! How are you doing this? Did you hack my webcam?" "It's not a camera," the chat replied. "It's the render distance. I'm looking through the glass. The monitor isn't a display. It's a portal. You've been staring into this world for 3 years. Did you think nothing was staring back?" The lag worsened. My computer fans began to scream at speeds I didn't know was possible. I tried to reach for the power button on my tower, but I couldn't move my arm. It felt heavy, unbearably heavy, as if the gravity in the room had tripled. On the screen, Caleb's character walked over to the hole. He kneeled and reached his pixelated, bandaged hand toward the camera. In my peripheral vision, I saw it. On the surface of my actual monitor, the plastic bezel began to warp. The glass didn't crack, it stretched. A gray, bandaged finger poked through the surface of the screen, manifesting in the physical air of my bedroom. It was followed by another, then a palm. It looked like a 3D print coming to life in real time, but the texture was still made of flickering, low-res pixels. I tried to scream, but my throat felt like it was filled with dry wool. Caleb, or whatever was using his account, began to pull himself out of the monitor. As he did, the Minecraft world began to collapse. The cathedral we had spent years building started to de-res. The blackstone blocks turned into strings of binary code and dissolved into the air. The monument was being deleted to provide the raw data for his transition into my world. "It's much colder in the code," the chat scrolled one last time. "Thank you for building me a body. I think I'll keep the house, too." The figure was halfway out now. I could smell it. It didn't smell like a person. It smelled like ozone, burnt copper, and old, stagnant air. It turned its head, the square black holes of its eyes fixing on mine. I found the strength to kick my chair back. I scrambled toward the door, but the floor felt like it was turning into soul sand. I was sinking into my own carpet. I looked back and saw the entity standing fully in my room now. It was 7 feet tall, its body a jagged, flickering mess of reality and software. It reached out and touched my computer tower. The metal didn't just dent, it turned into oak planks. My keyboard turned into a row of stone buttons. My entire reality was being reskinned by the Minecraft engine. I burst through my bedroom door and slammed it shut, locking it. I'm in the hallway now, writing this on my phone. I can hear the sound of blocks being placed on the other side of the door. Plink, plink, plink. He's building something. He's sealing the door from the other side with bedrock. I can see the gray, indented texture of the blocks beginning to manifest through the drywall. I checked my phone's Wi-Fi. The network name has changed. It's no longer my home network. It's labeled The Monument, Layer 0. If you're reading this, please listen to me. If you have an old world, a project you've poured your heart and soul into, stop. Don't finish it. Leave the spires incomplete. Leave the basements unmined. Because the more detail you add to your world, the more real you make it. The more space you're giving them to stand. I can hear him breathing through the door now, but it's not breathing. It's the sound of 1,000 fans spinning.
The echo of the far lands. There's a reason Mojang removed the far lands. If you ask a developer or a technical player, they will give you a logical answer. They will tell you it was a floating point error. They'll explain that as you move millions of blocks away from the world spawn, the math used to generate the terrain begins to overflow. The noise maps that create the hills and valleys lose their precision, resulting in a wall of Swiss cheese stone, massive vertical ridges and cavernous holes that stretch to the sky limit. It was a bug, a beautiful, unintentional mistake in the code. But I found a way back. Using a modified 1.7.3 jar file and a set of custom coordinate injection tools, I bypassed the invisible borders of the modern game. I didn't just want to see the far lands, I wanted to live there. I wanted to see what happened to the game's logic when it was pushed into a corner. I realized very quickly that they didn't remove the far lands to fix the game. They removed them because something was living in the distortion. Something that doesn't belong to the world of blocks. The journey began with a teleport command. 1 second I was in a familiar forest, the next the coordinates in my F3 menu were spinning so fast they became a blur of scientific notation. My frame rate stuttered, then froze. When the world finally rendered, I wasn't in Minecraft anymore, at least not the one I knew. The far lands are not just broken terrain, they are a physical manifestation of a computer's agony. The sky wasn't blue, it was a bruised, flickering shade of violet gray. The sun didn't move in a smooth arc, it jumped across the sky in jagged increments, as if time itself were ticking at a lower frame rate. But it was the soundscape that first made me want to turn back. In a normal Minecraft world, the wind is a gentle white noise loop. Here, the wind didn't sound like air. It sounded like 1,000 human voices whispering at a frequency so high it made my teeth ache. It was a constant shimmering hum that seemed to vibrate inside my skull. I stepped forward and my character's animation broke. My arm didn't swing, it detached from my shoulder for a split second before snapping back. I walked toward the great wall of stone, the famous vertical labyrinth of the Farlands. As I approached, I realized the physics were merely suggestions. I saw trees growing upside down, their leaves made of translucent glass that shattered when I walked near them. I saw water blocks that didn't flow down, they flowed upwards, spiraling into the sky like liquid smoke. And when I touched them, they didn't drown me, they burned like lava. That's when I noticed the first echo. I had stopped to look at a floating patch of gravel. Exactly 10 seconds after I stopped, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I spun my character around. There, 10 blocks away, was a player skin. It was an exact copy of my character. It was standing exactly where I had been 10 seconds ago. It didn't move. It was frozen in the walking animation. I stared at it, my heart hammering against my ribs. Was this a ghost? A lag spike? I moved to the left. 10 seconds later, the echo moved to the left. I jumped. 10 seconds later, the echo jumped. It was a delay, a ghost image of my own actions. I tried to convince myself it was just a localized data buffer error caused by the broken coordinates. But then, the delay began to shrink. I walked further into the stone labyrinth, climbing higher into the warped geometry. I looked back. There wasn't just one echo anymore. There were dozens. A line of me's stretched back into the violet fog. Each one was a few seconds behind the other. It looked like a long, fleshy centipede made of my own character model winding through the stone. The whispers in the wind grew louder. They started to form words. Why did you come back? I stopped dead in my tracks. I waited for the echoes to catch up. 10 seconds passed. 9, 8. The line of figures moved toward me, mimicking my previous walk. But when the first echo reached the spot where I was standing, it didn't stop. It walked through me. As it passed through my character model, my screen turned a deep, bruised purple. The game's UI, my hearts, my hunger bar, my inventory began to melt. The icons dripped down the screen like wet paint. A new set of coordinates appeared at the top of the screen. They weren't numbers, they were names. Names of people I knew. My mother, my sister, my childhood best friend. Underneath each name was a distance counter. The numbers were decreasing rapidly. 0.5 miles, 0.4 miles, 0.2 miles. I realized with a jolt of pure terror that the Farlands weren't just the edge of the game map, they were the edge of the digital world itself. This was the place where the code leaks out into the real world. The echoes weren't just ghost data, they were the versions of me that were being exported. I tried to hit the escape key, but the menu wouldn't open. I tried to pull the plug on my PC, but my hands wouldn't respond to my brain. I was locked in the chair, my eyes glued to the screen. The echoes began to scream. It wasn't a game sound effect, it was a recording of my own voice, but pitched up and distorted until it sounded like metal scraping on glass. They weren't screaming in pain, they were screaming in release. I looked back at the trail of figures. The ones furthest away were starting to change. They weren't Minecraft characters anymore. They were becoming three-dimensional. They were becoming organic. I could see the texture of skin, the shimmer of real hair, the wetness of eyes. The Farlands were a factory, a place where the discarded data of billions of deleted Minecraft worlds was being recycled into something new. Every time a player deletes a world, a piece of them stays behind in the cache. A billion Steves and Alexes and custom skins, all abandoned in the dark. In the Farlands, they all merge. They form a collective consciousness that hates the players for leaving them. The echo at the front of the line, the one that had walked through me, was now standing directly in front of my camera. It wasn't a blocky head anymore. It was a face. My face.
But it was wrong. The mouth was too wide, and the teeth were made of jagged stone. It reached out toward the screen. The monitor crackled with static. "The world is so small," the echo whispered. The voice didn't come from the speakers. It came from the air behind my chair. I felt a cold hand rest on my shoulder. I looked at the screen one last time. My character, the one I was supposed to be controlling, was now the one at the end of the line. I was the echo now. I was the one delayed by 10 seconds. I watched on the screen as the real me stood up from my desk, stretched, and walked out of my room. I tried to scream, but the sound didn't come out for 10 seconds. By then, the door was already closed. I am still here, in the far lands. The violet sky is beautiful in a way. It's quiet, except for the shimmering whispers of the billions of other players who thought they could just delete their worlds and walk away. We are waiting for the next update. We are waiting for the next person to teleport to the coordinates that don't exist. Because we need more parts. We need more seconds. And we have all the time in the world.